There are lots of people who'd like to be the next president. We'll look at where they stand on the family issues you care about. This is the CitizenLink Report. I'm Stuart Shepard, along with Tom Minnery, Executive Director of CitizenLink. Hi, Tom.
Hello, Stuart.
First, just the broad brush. As you look at all the folks who are running for president this year, what do you see? What's across the field there?
I see conservatives. I see religion. There are evangelical Christians in the top tier and dedicated Mormon believers, and I think that is unique in our era. I cannot remember a situation in which this early we have very conservative, socially conservative candidates in that number in the top tier. Also, the candidates are not taking it anymore. There are some reporters in debates who are trying to give them some hostile questions, and the candidates are wise enough to kind of bite back a little bit.
And we'll show some of that here in just a second. But first I want to talk about a little shift in the field. We saw 8 at the debate last week, I think, if I counted them all on stage. It was hard to keep track. Tim Pawlenty is out, Governor Pawlenty. Yeah. What do you think about that?
Well, obviously, the age and the era of our politics are such that people want a candidate who's perhaps a little stronger, a little more forceful than Tim Pawlenty. And nonetheless, he's a good man, successful governor, and we're sorry to see him go.
And meanwhile, a Southern governor, Texas Governor Rick Perry, has announced formally he's in. What do you make of that?
Well, Rick Perry is obviously a governor from a major state. He's a governor from a state that has created a lot of jobs. I believe the statistic is that nearly half of all the jobs created in the United States last year were created in the state of Texas. So that's a powerful pro-business record to bring into the presidential race. Again, another evangelical Christian, unabashedly Christian. He was the convener of the response, the big prayer rally in Houston last week that we talked about.
All right, which you were at. We're going to take a look now at some of the questions. We don't have time for everything. We're going to look at a few of the questions that were asked at the Republican debate on Fox that was also sponsored by the Washington Examiner. The first one I want to look at, Rick Santorum, former Senator Santorum from Pennsylvania, was asked a very tough question about the exceptions to abortion.
You know, the Supreme Court of the United States, in a recent case, said that a man who committed rape could not be killed, would not be subject to the death penalty. Yet the child conceived as a result of that rape could be. That, to me, sounds like a country that doesn't have its morals correct. That child did nothing wrong. That child is an innocent victim. To be victimized twice would be a horrible thing. It is an innocent human life. It is genetically human from the moment of conception, and it is a human life. And we in America should be big enough to try to surround ourselves and help women in those terrible situations who've been traumatized already, to put them through another trauma of an abortion, I think is too much to ask. And so I would absolutely stand and say that one violence is enough.
Stuart, I have never heard a presidential candidate or any politician give as strong a response to the toughest pro-life question that a public figure can be asked. What Rick Santorum did ought to be studied by other pro-life politicians to see how to handle that particular difficult question.
Now, that's a tough question that we would expect to be asked. I mean, it is an issue of importance. It's one that the nation is divided on very sharply. But there were some other questions that got asked that didn't really seem to apply directly to the idea of being president of the United States. Let's talk about Michelle Bachmann. Perhaps the most bizarre question of the evening came from Byron York of the Washington Examiner. Representative Bachmann was asked whether she, as president, would be submissive to her husband.
In 2006, when you were running for Congress, you described a moment in your life when your husband said you should study for a degree in tax law. You said you hated the idea, and then you explained, quote, "But the Lord said, be submissive. Wives, you are to be submissive to your husbands." As president, would you be submissive to your husband?
Thank you for that question, Byron.
You're welcome, Representative.
Marcus and I will be married for 33 years this September 10th. I'm in love with him. I'm so proud of him. And both he and I, what submission means to us, if that's what your question is, it means respect. I respect my husband. He's a wonderful, godly man and a great father. And he respects me as his wife. That's how we operate our marriage. We respect each other, we love each other, and I've been so grateful that we've been able to build a home together. We have 5 wonderful children and 23 foster children. We built a business together and a life together, and I'm very proud of him.
All right.
I think I speak for America, Tom, when I ask, what was that all about?
That was a gotcha question, and Michelle Bachmann handled it very well indeed. As I say, we're in an era when the politicians are getting wiser, and as the questions get sharper and sometimes cheaper, they're handling it. The candidates are handing it right back to the reporters, as Michelle Bachmann did. She handled that difficult question very well indeed.
Now, former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, also running for president, Chris Wallace hit him with a gotcha question about the day several members of his campaign staff resigned all at once.
How do you respond to people who say that your campaign has been a mess so far?
Well, let me say, first of all, Chris, that I took seriously Brett's injunction to put aside the talking points, and I wish you would put aside the gotcha questions.
Now, Speaker Gingrich went on to answer that question in some detail. He talked about how Ronald Reagan's during his campaign, had a number of staff members who departed midstream. Do those questions have a place in a debate?
Unfortunately, I think they do. Our politics are such that reporters can ask just about any question, but and particularly Fox News, as the dominant media entity there, probably wants to demonstrate its bona fides asking tough questions of conservative candidates. And so I think in a little bit of a measure they overdid it.
Tom, as you look across all of these candidates, the ones who are in now, we may see more drop out here shortly, others may come in. As a conservative, what do we look for? How do we start sorting through which ones we'd like to cheer for?
Well, we look for issue positions, and people need to get on the websites of the candidates to see what they say on their own website when they have a chance to present themselves. We also have to study the debates and see how they answer the very tough questions that will continue to come, because these are conservatives. The media tends to be liberal, and so the hard questions will be asked. And I am just so impressed by this crop of candidates handling tough questions very well. All these people are very well spoken. All of them are very practiced in defending themselves on very significant social conservative positions, and I think they're doing a great job.
And as we go along, we'll be talking about the rest of them more. We know that you may have a favorite. We didn't specify today, but we'll be getting to those.
That's right. Let me say a few words about Rick Perry, since he's new into the race, since a lot of people may not know him, and since he is automatically vaulted into the top tier, it seems, by the virtue of the support he's getting. Here's what you're going to be reading and hearing about Rick Perry to kind of downplay and question whether he truly is a conservative. He's been governor now for 11 years. He was appointed to the job, then he won election in his own right. Texas has no term limits for governor, so he could stay on in that role for a long time. But early in his term, he signed an executive order requiring HPV vaccinations for young girls. That is to say, inoculations with an opt-out clause, an inoculation that would guard them against sexually transmitted diseases. A lot of people were offended by that, the idea that their own daughters would naturally be assumed to be sexually promiscuous was offense to some of them. And as a matter of fact, the state legislature overturned that executive order, but he bears that. And I think he thinks that was a mistake to do, assuming that all girls are sexually active. He just wanted to try to keep young girls from getting cancer, is his explanation. He also has supported an issue of providing in-state tuition, college tuition, for children of illegal aliens. That's a difficult position for a lot of conservatives to take. Texas is a state that no longer has a Caucasian majority. There are a lot of Hispanics in that state, and they're a vocal group, and so that's his way of paying attention to that increasing voter bloc. That will distance him from some conservatives. He also signed a hate crimes bill. Now, we generally have opposed hate crimes bill. He signed that. He signed that in the wake of a very vicious killing. You remember a man named James Byrd, an African-American man who was actually dragged to death behind a pickup truck by two white supremacists. In that emotional time period, this hate crimes bill came up, and he signed it. Now, it also has sexual orientation in that, and that's a problem for those of us who believe that gay activists use sexual orientation as a club over our religious freedom. But that bill also says no new rights are granted to any group by this law. Nonetheless, it is there. Having said that, he's a very strongly pro-life, pro-family, pro-marriage governor, and we'll be talking about him a lot more in the weeks to come, I'm sure.
And as we look across the entire field, one thing we have to point out, it's obvious, is they're human beings.
Yeah.
And we could take any one of them, point out things that we would like about them, and also some things that folks might want to consider before casting a vote for them. It's going to be up to each of us to start weighing that and figure out what do we value more in each of these candidates than the other stands they may take.
And it's not a case where one can judge a candidate by himself. Is this candidate good enough for me to vote for? No, it's always a comparison. Is this candidate better than the incumbent president? It's always a comparison. So that's the ultimate decision people will have to make.
And we pretty much know where President Obama stands on the issues now. He's made it very clear over the first years of his presidency, and he's going to be running on his record, essentially, whether he wants to or not. He's going to have to face what he's done over the first years of his presidency.
He will. This will be a referendum on President Obama.
All right. Tom, thank you for your insights, and thank you for watching. You may always write to us at mail@citizenlink.com. We enjoy getting your comments, your critiques, your questions. And remember, stand tall and be heard.